You've learned the scales. You've memorized the patterns. So why do your solos still not sound good? I see it all the time. Intermediate level guitarists that are stuck in a musical dead zone. They feel like they know a lot, but they can't do anything with it. When they try to solo, they feel overwhelmed, their thoughts scatter, and they get totally frustrated because they can't turn their knowledge into confident, expressive guitar playing. If this sounds like you, it's not because you're missing some secret scale. It's because you're making one or more of these 4 common mistakes. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to fix each one, and we're going to get your solos sounding great. I'm Charlie Long. Let's get into it. We're going to start with solo killer number 1, and that is you're practicing scales all wrong. I should change that title to you're practicing scales all wrong to be able to use them musically when you solo. Now, I believe music is a language, and to be able to speak a language, you have to learn vocabulary. And that's whether those are words to say or notes to play. Scales are a huge part of the vocabulary of guitarists or any musician. The problem is how we guitarists tend to practice scales. We spend a lot of time mindlessly running patterns that go across all 6 strings on our guitar. Not only that, but we usually do it with a metronome trying to get as robotically perfect with our timing as possible. And then when we hear our solos, we think, well, crap, I sound like a scale playing robot. A concept that I'm always trying to get across to students. You're gonna play like you practice, so you'd better spend some time practicing musically. Of course you need to know your scale shapes. Of course you need to have great timing. But you need to be able to use those skills in ways that make you sound like an expressive musician, not a typewriter. Try practicing scales like this. Here's the E major scale all over the fretboard. We're looking at E major because our backing track today is in E. And it's like, holy crap, that's overwhelming. Now I could reduce that to just one pattern of E major. And it's still a lot to look at and think about. But what if we look at it like this? Reducing it down to 2 strings. Now this is something we can get our heads, but more importantly, our ears around. We want to spend part of our practice time identifying little scale fragments like this and making up licks, getting everything out of those 6 notes that we can, making up melodies, working on our phrasing, and we can still do it to a click or over a backing track to work on our timing. Start off with just the notes on the B string. Add in a note or 2 from the E string. And work up to playing phrases with all 6 notes. The benefits of practicing like this are huge. Because we're dealing with less information, it's easier to come up with licks and melodies. The licks and melodies sound like real musical statements, not like some coked up 80s shredder trying to win a trophy for playing the most notes. And you're multitasking. You're still ingraining fretboard knowledge, but you're also working on timing and phrasing. I'm going to play over the backing track, and I'm going to do it using 3 6-note fragments on the B and E strings. And I'll put up a diagram so you can see which patterns I'm using. Check it out. On to solo killer number 2. It's sort of the opposite of solo killer number 1, but they're still related. And that is, you don't really know what you think you know. Now, what the heck do I mean by that? All too often, I see guitarists that sort of half learn a concept. Like memorizing a pattern or 2 of a scale really well, but then getting lazy with the rest of the patterns. And when they try to use it in a solo, they make a mistake, they freeze up, and they get stuck going back to the 1 or 2 patterns that they know well. Perfect example, I was teaching at a guitar camp a few years ago, I'd done a presentation on creative uses of the pentatonic scale, and I had used an Eric Johnson style lick as an example. You know, the kind of thing he does that covers the whole guitar neck. A guy who'd presented himself as a really experienced player came up to me afterward and asked about how to practice this type of thing. I made the point to him about being able to connect patterns. I asked him to play E minor pentatonic pattern 1 ascending on the D through E strings. Moving to pattern 2 and descending. Moving to pattern 3 and ascending. Moving to pattern 4 and descending. Well, he got pattern 1 and 2 okay, but when he went to pattern 3, he started to fumble. Pattern 4, he completely fell apart. And I had to be blunt with him. If you can't move from pattern to pattern fluidly, playing straight patterns, how can you possibly hope to play creative licks moving from pattern to pattern? Once again, I think a big part of the problem is starting with scale shapes that move across the entire neck. Try moving through the 5 pentatonic patterns, but only on 2 strings at first, and we're going to go back to E major. Get that smooth, try 3 strings. And then, of course, keep going until you're playing across however many strings you might have on your guitar. Another great way to practice this, put on a backing track, improvise over it, but every 2 measures, force yourself to shift to a different pentatonic box. I'm going to play over the backing track. I'm going to start off in E major pentatonic box 5, and then every 2 measures I'm going to switch box 1, box 2, box 3. Have a listen. Now we're on to solo killer number 3, which is playing with a total lack of rhythmic variation. And I hear this in multiple ways from students. Let's take them one at a time. The first way I hear it, many developing players always start their licks on the downbeat. I hear them doing something like this. A great way to overcome that is to play over a track and force yourself to start on a different beat than the 1. For instance, I'm going to go back, I'm going to play over the backing track, I'm going to play a couple of licks. The first lick, I'm going to start on the 2nd beat of the measure. The 2nd lick I play, I'm going to start on the and of 4. Here we go. The second way I hear a lack of variety is players using the same subdivisions throughout their solos. It kind of sounds like this. And again, it goes back to robotic practicing, where we play, say, 16th notes to a certain tempo, and we never change that up. We just try to play those 16th notes a little bit faster day after day. But good guitar solos have lots of variations in the subdivisions, often in the same licks. Now, how do you practice that? Well, here's an incredible exercise. we're going to play pentatonic scales over our backing track. In each measure, we're going to change the subdivision we play wherever we are in the scale pattern. So we're going to start with eighth notes, switch to eighth note triplets, then play 16th notes, and then 16th note triplets. Here's what that sounds like over the backing track. We can do the same thing with the major scale. Let's use this pattern of E major. Starting at the 12th fret, we would have 4 beats of eighth notes, 4 beats of eighth note triplets, 4 beats of 16th notes, and then 4 beats of 16th note triplets. Let's hear the major scale working through those subdivisions over the track. Now that's challenging, but it's pretty fun and it is great for your playing. And it's going to make it much easier to make up licks and phrases where you mix these subdivisions in your solos. Let me play an example of the backing track where I'm first going to mix some slow playing with then faster pentatonic playing, and then I'll mix some more slow phrases with some faster major scale playing. Here we go. Brings us to solo killer number 4, which is bad phrasing. When I say phrasing, I'm talking about the techniques and nuances that we put on notes to make our notes sound more alive, like bends, slides, and vibrato. At any level of playing, phrasing is the secret sauce that makes good notes sound amazing. Bad phrasing, well, it could be you just don't use enough phrasing elements and your notes sound really plain. It could be your bends are out of tune. Your vibrato, it could also be out of tune. Or the speed of your vibrato, it may not match up to the tempo of the song you're playing over. A lot of students I see neglect their phrasing because they're so worried about building up their technique. So let's do another multitasking thing and work phrasing practice into our technique practice. How are we going to do that? Well, we can take any technique. Let's start with some 6-string major 7th arpeggios. The verse part of our backing track, it goes from E to A. So we can use this E major 7th shape and this A major 7th shape. And while really ingraining these two shapes, we could practice bending and sliding. How about blending the notes of 2 pentatonic patterns by sliding or bending into the 3rd note on each string and putting some nice vibrato on it? If we use pattern 5 of E major pentatonic and the 2nd notes on the string from pattern 1, which are all at the 14th fret, it would sound like this. I'm going to play some examples using that concept, both ascending and descending. Let's give it a try. So those are just a couple of examples, but I think it sounds pretty cool, and it's not only a great way to ingrain your fretboard knowledge, but to practice phrasing at the same time. There are other things that get in our way of soloing the way that we want to, of course, but if you work on these 4 solo killers, as I call them, you're going to see your soloing ability grow by leaps and bounds. Remember that you're going to play like you practice. So if you're only practicing techniques like a robot with no variation in rhythms or phrasing, that's the way your solos are going to sound. Or if you're only half learning scale and arpeggio patterns, you're going to get stuck using the same ones over and over, and all your solos are pretty much going to sound the same. So get to work on this stuff. It's always my goal for you to understand how to solo better, to play the kind of cool things that you always wanted to, and to just have a lot more fun playing the guitar. Thanks for watching. I'll be seeing you soon.